Everybody. Thank you for joining us for our second SIG COVID update meeting. We have two primary items on the agenda today. And the first is welcoming Marissa Berkmeyer to talk with us about the new release of the CI toolkit. So she's going to start us off there. And then the second part of the agenda is really just to have a conversation about where everybody is and how people are doing, and if there's anything the ASIG can help and support you with. So I'm Debbie Anderson. I am the chair of the ASIG and happy to have you all join us tonight.
All right. Well, I will go ahead and get started. So my name's Marissa Berkmeyer, and I had really the honor and the pleasure of being the chair of the task force for the CI toolkit development, the pediatric CI toolkit. So it was a 2-year project. We had thought maybe it would be a year, but that's okay. We still got it done, and the first launch of it just went live not too long ago, just a couple weeks ago, I think. And so what I'm going to do is just kind of give just a little bit of a background. We did do a presentation at ABTAC, just that went kind of over it. But I have, as I've been letting people into the Zoom meeting, there's definitely a few of the task force members. So I just want to acknowledge them. So all of the members, so Casey Nesbitt, I see her. Edie Kendall is another task force member. Lauren Emmel, Melinda Mueller, Rhonda Manning, and Katie Lobsher, and Sarah Garcia all contributed greatly to make it happen. So, and it was a great task force to work with. So I for sure wanted to acknowledge all of them, but really what we started with was, how do we figure out what the needs are? So we did do a needs assessment survey, and from there kind of built, based off of the feedback from that survey, what was really needed. And it was fun and thinking about like how it would look. And so now that we actually see what it looks like, there's definitely some positives to what the platform looks like, but there's for sure improvements. So I just want to assure you that a new committee is going to be, continuing the development and the management of the CI toolkit. And Casey Nesbitt is going to be one of them, and Lauren Emmel are going to kind of take the charge of that committee, of that continuing. So I wanted to just give a little bit of a background, but really what I want to do is go to the actual toolkit. So let me share. And so the toolkit, and for those of you who haven't looked yet or haven't been able to find it, I figured it was better just to start on the landing page of the website. So the toolkit, we were trying to figure out where it would be best placed, and we really wanted it to be a prominent placement for it. It is an open resource to the extent that the resources are open. So any PT could go to the Pediatric Academy website and actually go to the CI toolkit. That's going to be an open resource. So that's where it is. The other place you can find it, and I'm not going to take you there, is the ASIG page. But we thought if we left it just on the ASIG page, it would never be found. So we wanted it to be more easily found. So if you're guiding somebody there, all they have to do is go to the education tab and then drop down there. So then it's going to take you to the toolkit itself. And the first thing I kind of want to direct you to is just the introduction of it, but really this, so this form is our way of continuing the development of this toolkit. So what we really hope to have this toolkit be is a growing and developing toolkit so that folks actually, share, things that they've done instead of everybody kind of reinventing the wheel. And of course, there's things that you don't want to share because you want to get it published. And at ABTAC, there were some people that came up and we discussed some of that. And I was like, you kind of have to balance it of you know, where do you want it? Or if it's just a worksheet that you think has been really helpful and you never want to publish it, then this might be a good place to share it. But this is where we're hoping that people will go to and just click on that, and it just goes to this toolkit proposal form. And so you can guide folks to go there as well if you have a CI, or if you have something that you want to contribute. This is where you would submit that and just fill out this form. So that is a really big piece that we're hoping continues to develop. Because for those of you that have also gone into the toolkit, you'll see that we do link it out to a lot of different places that are already on the Pediatric Academy website. So the fact sheets are all linked out. But we thought it was a good idea to do that, just to continue to direct people to the resources that already exist, because you can take those fact sheets and create an assignment out of it, or just guide students to go review certain fact sheets that are on topics of interest. But there are definitely still lots of therapists out there that have no idea that those fact sheets exist. So the search feature, and this is what probably you'll see over the iterations and changes of the toolkit, you'll probably see refinement of how you'll find things. Right now, we do have a lot of resources. I think it's like 162 that are linked out. But if you wanted to just look at all of them, you would just click on the view all available documents. And so when you click on that, it basically just drops down and you'll see everything highlighted over here. In my box of pictures is, okay, that's better. It was blocking things. So you see a whole big long list. You can look at 50 at a time, but I'm gonna go back up, hopefully not make any of you dizzy. Because then what you can do is actually filter things. And so what we chose to do, and this was kind of guided based off of the survey of, what were some of the specific tools that CIs were looking for, pediatric CIs were looking for. And then also many people that responded were also looking at setting specific resources. So when you click on that, you'll see a drop down of, could be just looking at all toolkit types, or it could be these different subcategories of clinical reasoning, helpful assignments, general, weekly objectives, and then CI development. So if you just click on, I'm going to click on the CI development one and not worry about the practice location. And the tags themselves, I haven't figured those out, but I haven't really worried myself too much with that. Those appear and I'm not quite sure why. But if you look at and then click on filter parameters. So I just clicked on clinical instructor development. And then what I'm going to get is actually all of the resources that we linked out to clinical instructor development. So this is where somebody who's not a pediatric PT, there's actually a lot of good resources. So if you have CIs, if you're in clinical education, and it's a non-pediatric CI, this links out to what I could find, all the CI resources through ACAPT, through APTA, and we have our own fact sheets that could be beneficial as well as all, different articles that might be beneficial. But again, more general ones. So there's also a listing of all of the consortiums here too, and different assessment tools that are used in clinical education. And so if you're interested in something like this, so this is the CIET, so that's a toolkit that's not as well known. You can click on this link and it actually just goes to the article. So when you click on that, it's going to go to the actual article that was published from. Or say you wanted to go to the New England Consortium, their course list, that's going to take you to their website. So of course, this is going to be a lot of maintenance because eventually these URLs are going to change, and so that's part of the committee that will be, kind of the maintenance of it. But it is going to be really helpful, I think, for a lot of clinical educators that are non-pediatric, because all of these resources are really just in one place. And as you get down here further, there are there's some that have been actually just submitted by folks. So those are websites. And I'll share this one. I developed this one with Mary Jane and Lisa. And this is based off of their article, but I just came up with the top 10. And so I had them review it. We came up with different ideas, but it's not something that I need to say is mine. I want other people to kind of look at those resources as well. Look at this of like, oh, this is how I can get students exposed to the NICU. So these are some of the types of resources that could be included. So the other thing you can look at too is just practice location. So say I go to helpful assignments, but I really want to look more specifically at school-based. So that's going to narrow it down to whatever the task force had tied to school-based setting to assignments. And of course, a lot of these assignments, even as I'm looking at them, can be adapted to different practice settings. But I'll just click on that and then see what comes up. So there's fact sheets that come up. And then down here, there's some treatment plan worksheets. Here's some goal starters. So I'll just click on that. This is a nice document. So somebody had submitted just basically a bunch of goal starters that they use with their students in the school-based setting. So again, these are just kind of jumping points for CIs to start to, they'll make it their own as well. But this is helpful ways for especially new CIs to start to think about like, well, how do I put together a goal? Or, how do I help students develop, their goal writing? So there's resources like that in here. And there was another thing I wanted to show. Oh yeah. So sometimes if you get too specific though, because there aren't that many resources, I mean, 162 is a lot, but obviously if you get too specific, you might get very little in what you want. So here, so helpful assignments, outpatient. That's not all that's tied to outpatient. We don't have a lot tied to outpatient specifically, but that's all you get. So if you're using it or if you're having somebody use it, I would suggest potentially going a little broader right now, because even if it pops up, 30 to 40 resources, that's not going to be too much to kind of skim through, and it'll give you more to kind of look at, to hopefully for folks to find what's important to them. So this is a sample patient exam template. This is something else somebody submitted. So again, this is what somebody uses with their students to help them with chart review, subjective interviewing, exam. And this could, again, all be adapted, could be used for a different setting. And I do think a lot of these can just be adapted and used in any, whether it's pediatrics or adult. So a lot of these can be adapted for that too. So I guess I will open it up for questions, or if you want me to show you anything else on this.
Marissa, this is Casey.
Yeah.
Thanks for that introduction. I discovered something about this search feature that was really exciting to me.
Oh, good.
Because we've been playing with it. If you go to search all columns and you put in like something like, I don't know. I put in I forget what I put in, but it searches everything. And then it
does it do like a word search actually?
Yeah,
Like, so if I put in just worksheet?
Maybe, yeah, let's try it. I haven't tested it for a lot of things, and then
let's see, anything can happen. Or do you think it, let me go to.
Just do select all, yeah. And then do view all available documents maybe. First do view all
maybe
available
filter
documents.
Or should I do filter parameters?
No, do first view all.
Okay.
And then put in your search term.
View all, and
then put in worksheet. So it functions just like and it kind of just does it. Like this is all the ones that it's already done it.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
it did a 15.
So that was
Okay.
I was happy about that.
Yeah, that's good.
For the
That's good.
functionality of the searching. Yeah.
Yeah. And so you can see there some of the things that came up were anything that basically,
Talks about
yeah,
it.
so it was just a word find. So that wasn't even
Mhm.
something we did. That's just part of the program. So
Yeah.
that is a good
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, thanks for sharing that.
Marissa, this is Mary Jane.
Yeah.
So I am not, you described how it would be useful for people who aren't in peds, and I completely agree with that. I mean, I think there's a lot of things here.
Mm.
So how would they get it though? I mean, through us or?
So it's going to be through just word of mouth right now. And so I did the task force, we did submit to maybe present at ELC to hopefully get it out a little bit more there. We are also looking at potentially writing up a manuscript, maybe at least for just the process, and maybe even just for the idea of duplicating it into other academies or other professions as a resource. So we're hoping to disseminate it a little bit in that way. I did send it out when we launched it. I did put it out on the ClinEd listserv. I didn't do it for the Education Academy. I didn't do it for the general education listserv. I just did the ClinEd folks.
And so they can access it though through the link provided?
Yep. So
Okay.
they can, so the link, and that was a big, part of the, the decision making with the task force, is that we ultimately really wanted it to be as accessible as possible. There's definitely, I for sure agree that there's benefits to being a member. But we figured that if the resource itself was member limited, that would limit it itself. We're more just kind of a repository. This is a repository for resources, and if they hit a roadblock because it's a limited resource to members only, then maybe that'll encourage membership. But otherwise, if you send anybody to that toolkit, they'll be able to access it.
Okay, great. Thank you. I agree with your philosophy wholeheartedly. So justify it to me. And I wonder if like the Academy of Physical Therapist Education would want to like have some link on their site from it, or some sort of.
Mary Jane, do you mind? I was waiting for a moment to jump in. I'm sorry, and I think I'm echoing. Can you hear me okay? I'm Janice Howman. I don't know. This is my first time coming on the SIG, but I'm also the chair of the National Consortium of Clinical Education through ACAP. And yes, we have, if it isn't already done, it's in the process of being linked to the NCC website, because I just want to commend you guys. This is amazing. And I am so thankful that you made it open access because our CIs already do so much for us. It's great to give them a resource that, isn't kind of behind, membership walls. And so absolutely commend you guys. You did a fantastic job, and we were so excited to see this. And yes, we have on the ACAP website, there is a clinical education tab, and it is going to be on there if it isn't already. And we also are working on the regional networking session for ELC, whether it's going to be virtual or in person this year. But one of our goals is to kind of do something similar for all of ClinEd and start to build some resources. And of course, this is going to be something, that's one of the reasons I was here, is like dying to hear more about this and hear your process, because you have such an excellent product. And we hope to be able to emulate and do something similar so that we can, again, have those links back and forth. So, yeah, so I'm real excited about that. And I did have a question, Marissa, for you, is in terms of when people, submit information to the toolkit, do you have any vetting process, or do you just anything that anyone submits, you go ahead and you put up, or do you vet the resources to make sure that they're of a quality that you want on the toolkit?
We are. That was part of kind of the transition process, and so after the toolkit's been launched, I've handed over leadership to Casey and Lauren. So I'll let Casey maybe speak to the vetting process, but we did, as a group, discuss that it would be important to have a vetting process, but not one that's so arduous that it would prevent submissions. So it's really just to make sure that it's a good resource. It's not completely lifted from another one, and it's a copyright issue. But otherwise, but we will have a vetting issue, but I don't remember the process. I think we're going to have a few people review, but not like a whole 8 or 9 or anything.
Mm-hmm.
And Casey, did you want to add anything else?
No, I don't think we have anything that I think we're living and learning here a little bit.
Yeah.
And what we did with the current resources was we reached out to people, kind of the experts in the area, and kind of had them assist us in looking at things. So I think that we would continue to do that. And then probably just for the kind of the sustainability of everything, we would want to develop some kind of guidelines at some point. But again, trying to keep it as open as possible, help people feel like they could post something that's in the process of being developed, because the idea is that someone else is going to take it and use it in another way, perhaps, and perhaps resubmit it as something that has evolved. So we want this to be very living. So I don't know if I have a good answer, but we're going to do our best to make sure that it represents us well, but also represents kind of the evolving process that we all go through when we develop resources.
Mm-hmm. And when we were at AbTech, that was part of our presentation, was to hopefully start to generate. At the time, we had hoped that it would be live. It wasn't live at that time, but we did start to solicit ideas during that session, and to kind of get people interested in submitting. And I think that's just something that a lot of CIs feel that they can't contribute, but they develop a lot of very easy resources that would be very helpful to a lot of people, and I don't think that they realize that, and so this is a way for them to contribute.
Excellent, thank you.
Hey, Marissa, real quick to piggyback on Mary Jane's comment, I just did a Google search, and I typed in clinical instructor toolkit physical therapist, and it took me directly to the ASIG page. And once I logged in, it took me directly there. So let me talk to Cindy Sliwa and see if we can relink that to the public access point instead of the ASIG, because if you've got it in Google and it was the first thing that popped up, this could be
no,
huge.
I didn't realize that, but no, it should be rerouted to the one that's on the main page.
Anybody have any other questions for Marissa or ideas? Or for Casey, who's taken over? Lauren? All right, well, thank you so much, Marissa. We really appreciate all the work that your whole committee has done. Just fabulous stuff. And I'm really excited to just see how that grows, the more people that start to use it. I know I've already had fun just playing around to see what's on there. But now, thanks, Casey. I didn't try the little search box, so that's a whole nother way to go for that. Awesome. Now the rest of this time, we really just wanted to do a check-in to see how people are doing. Our last time that we touched base was just a few weeks into the stay-at-home orders in most states, and most of our programs had made a quick shift to online education, and people were doing a lot of sharing of approaches. Does anybody have any comments? Anybody want to give an update on what's happening in their area of the world? Everybody's just waiting, waiting. I'm in Illinois. I'm waiting, waiting. June 1st.
Has anyone started back on campus yet? June, sometime in June, are programs getting back on
Yeah.
campus?
We're currently scheduled to be back on campus end of June, June 29th.
Okay.
Is our target to do our psychomotor testing for spring courses, so then our students can start clinic in July, which we shifted. They were supposed to start in June. So,
Marissa, are your students going to be able to come back all in the same room, or do you have limitations as far as social distancing? How are you doing labs?
right. So now, right now, the plan, and I got volunteered for that task force. So I'm on our school-wide task force. I have somebody, yes. But it's interesting. But yeah, I mean, all of those things are being looked at. When we originally were given the 29th, that would be when we would be permitted to bring them back on the labs. We were already told basically, and again, this could change, but that there couldn't be more than 20 people in one of our lab spaces, which is pretty big, you know. And so we've already rearranged schedules and everything so that we'd be able to spread the whole cohort out amongst our 2 classrooms plus our 2 lab spaces. So it would be down to probably more like less than 15, probably like 10 to 12 per space. So right now we'll probably be okay with that. I know in some other, you know, it depends on the jurisdiction, but right now I think we'll be okay with that. But I'm on the committee that's looking at, you know, safe practices for cleaning and for, you know, what type of PPE do they need while they're doing labs, you know. And so I think they're going to have to be using the same type of PPE that they would be using during patient care. So probably just surgical masks and face shields or goggles is what I'm imagining, since they're going to be doing close contact lab activities. But yeah, I mean, right now we've been given the go ahead, but that could always change.
Yeah, as I'm looking through the chat, it looks like a number of programs are targeted. And Heather, you're in the Midwest. Jessica's at Creighton with me. We're in the Midwest. We're June 15th for labs only. And it looks like a number of folks are following in line with that. And then even in the fall, that's still our plan, didactic online and labs only. And it looks like it's anywhere between 10 to 20 to 25 per group, depending on, we don't probably even know what, that depends on. But yes, I think the cleaning, the screening procedure, and then, I mean, I think the biggest question is, what are we going to do when someone gets sick? Not if, but when. When that happens, what is that plan? I don't know. Has anybody have guidance on that?
So our guidance right now is following our affiliated medical faculty practice. So our MFA, medical faculty associates. So that's all the outpatient medical stuff. And so they have a process of basically the COVID, you know, protocol for cleaning, you know, or somebody on staff is, you know, is positive. So right now, I think our university will be going and following that same protocol. But the other big thing is just having in place the contact tracing, you know, and to be able to do the contact tracing. And so that's going to be hard, but I think that's where having, you know, a specific number of students going to the one designated space. I think they're going to be assigned to whatever lab they start to go to. That'll be the one that they always go to. versus, mixing up. And I think, and I saw just on my Facebook page, one of my friends posted that CDC came out just with K through 12 recommendations today, I think. And so I was just kind of glancing through some of those as well. But yeah, we're planning on doing all online other than lab in the fall, and as well as finishing any lab type of activity before Thanksgiving. That's what we're being asked to do.
Does anyone else feel like at UK, we are the first program that's going to try the face-to-face labs, and we're almost looked at as the guinea pig or the beta test for that. So there's a little more pressure all of a sudden with that.
Yeah, we're kind of going through that right now. We're running some simulated labs to try to teach out graduates that didn't meet all their clin ed. And we're actually not doing it on campus. We're doing it on in our multi-specialty clinic because it's a clinic area, but basically it's kind of the beta test. So we have 10 people or less in each room. Everybody comes in staggered groups. Everybody's temperature is taken. They are filtered into certain spaces. They maintain that space for their entire day. All their stuff is there. All their PPE is there. Face shields, masks, gloves, and gowns, to the extent they can as they're doing patient care, right? So it depends on what the activity is. And we're running that for the next 2.5 weeks. Our current management, because we've had our multi-specialty clinic open for essential patients during this whole time, has been that when there's been any case on campus or in the clinic, the contact trace is run through our human resources. The people that have been in contact are identified. Those people are under quarantine for 2 weeks. And everything goes through a specific process that they've already put together for cleaning. And, that's fine for little groups of people because it's really been little groups of people, but I'm not sure how that's going to work for bigger groups of people, right? So the amount of work for 7 students to get through this process is tremendous, to maintain all that kind of thing for 7 students. So I'm not sure how that's going to work for a full class, but we're kind of the beta test for that. I needed to be the beta test, so I raised my hand. So
It sounds like Jim's doing split labs. So that I know that was discussed.
Wow, for
us too. But that's where we do have enough space that we can spread out to avoid split labs. And then also we're able to project on in the classroom and screens and everything so that lab skills that are demonstrated somewhere there, they can get projected into other rooms. But yeah, I was concerned we were going to have to do split labs.
So how are you balancing that out with your didactic coursework if your people are right? Because if everybody's not staying in their lane, then you're crossing over someone else's lane. So has anybody worked out the logistics of that?
One of the things we're having to think through is because our students sometimes travel a distance to campus, that if they're required to be on site for a lab, they need to be home for their online didactic. And so there needs to be travel time built in, and the university isn't really amenable to loosening requirements of them just staying to do didactic work on their computer. So we're still trying to work through some of that.
Have some good ideas for our next town hall. Thanks, Heather. Has anybody, can I ask, are people having their students' temperature taken as they come onto campus? Is anybody else doing that? So can I ask how you're logistically looking at doing that for all the students coming onto your campus? Anybody have are there checkpoints? Are there faculty doing them?
We have had to really outline our processes for where students will enter the building and what that checkpoint will look like. And we will have staff and some of our residents who have been furloughed from their clinical sites helping to manage those check-in stations as students come into the building.
Okay. Anybody else? Something they would
So
like
our
to share?
campus at the University of Colorado is using a process that involves a temperature check and an app that everybody will have on their phone. They will answer so somewhere between 3 and 5 questions every single day. This process will occur and well, every day that someone comes on campus. And they have colored wristbands. So assuming that the individual passes the screening checkpoint, they'll get a wristband that's color coded for that particular day. And that will indicate to other people who are around them that indeed they have been checked, so that there's no questioning about that. If they fail the checkpoint, then that's a different process. And they still haven't quite decided whether they're going to conduct the checkpoint at the building location upon entry of the building, or in a more peripheral location before, like from the parking lots towards the building. So that's changed a few different times, and I imagine it will continue to change up until basically the day that we use it, just for a variety of reasons. So it's a little hard to answer a lot of the questions just because it's a constant moving target. But we're definitely getting closer.
Yeah, that wristband that's a new concept that I've heard. So thanks for sharing that, Mary Jane. Anybody else have something new or different or great idea?
We're experimenting this week with a Qualtrics survey to the students. We're testing it on ourselves first to see if it works, and then just being able to record it in Qualtrics every day. So that's not the same as the temperature checks, but just for some of those basic questions.
If you don't mind me switching a topic, I have a question I would love to pose to the group, if that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
I would just love to hear whether you are a clinical educator or an academic educator when you are either sending students back out into ClinEd or accepting students back into ClinEd.
So I can talk about that so I'm the program director, and we've had students out in clinical education throughout this time frame. And that's been based on several things. It's been based on geography, because every area that our students go is not under the same level of COVID response than others are. Even though we're located in the suburbs of Chicago, our students go all over the US. So some have students somewhere in Kansas that they've never even seen a patient with COVID yet, versus someone in a hospital in Chicago. So we have been basically our DCEs almost in daily conversations with the clinical sites and the students. From day one, students had an option to opt out of that clinical experience if they were at all uncomfortable, if they were at a risk physically, or because they were exposed to a family member, or they just were scared. So our students have had an option to opt out from day one. And I want to say maybe 10 to 15% have opted out. There's been another 20 to 25, or maybe closer to 30% that have been excused because the sites couldn't maintain clinical education during the crisis, because many of the inpatient settings around where I am, the PTs were processed into being frontline people, whether that was to help out in check-ins or whatever out of the clinics. Some of our outpatient clinics closed, but some of them stayed open. So it's really just been all over the place. PPE mostly has been fine and has been provided to the students, but typically face masks and gloves. There's not been the use of gowns and face shields unless they're in acute care, but most of our acute care students were excused pretty much right off the bat. And it's kind of like a moving target. You know, so
Debbie, do you have students that are going to have to make up that time later, or are you over CAPTE requirements so you're not going to worry about it for those? Meaning, are students, did you decide to have students with different numbers of weeks at the end of their curriculum?
Yeah, so we actually instituted a 6-phase plan. Yes, it's as complicated as it sounds. And every phase was added based on every new update from CAPTE. So when CAPTE first came out, they established weeks and depth and breadth, entry level, weeks, those 3 things, right? So we looked at all of our terminal students and had to make judgments. Unfortunately, our poor students were 5 weeks in, 5 weeks left to go. So they were literally just anywhere from 1 to 2 to 5 weeks to meet those standards. It just kind of depended whether or not where they were at closed down immediately when COVID became, or was someone delayed. So in the initial phases, as we know, CAPTE said clinical education could only be face-to-face. So at that point in time, we looked at the 28 weeks, the entry level status, and the depth and breadth, and we allowed our students to petition for early completion of clinical education if they could document and we could verify that those things were made. So all things that were met. So that was phase 1, but of course they're still in a course. So phase 2 was if they were able to document early completion of the clinical education part of the course, then we had to develop additional course content to fill that course. So case studies, they did an online nutrition course, they had to write a paper about COVID and its impact on their specific setting. So we instituted that. So those 2 phases occurred until I think it was the April 14th communication that came out from CAPTE that said, okay, now we're willing to open up a little bit and we'll consider telehealth and we'll consider some other kinds of things. So many of our students had maintained in the clinic, but remotely doing telehealth. And we said, just do that. We don't know if we can count that, but if everybody's willing to be a player, we're gonna keep you in there. So we allowed some of that. And then the last communication pretty much said, schools need to do what they need to do to determine competency in their students, right? I'm summarizing, but basically they're all those things. So in this phase, we have done several things. We have set up simulated clinics, as I just said, for students that were literally almost there, you know, by all those things. They were just almost there. And we just need to be the ones that say they're competent. And the rest of the students are being replaced. So they've been resent out. So we've already, clinics in this area started taking students back on May 11th. So basically every week I have a certain number of students who are graduating. So last week it was 4, this week it's 2, next week it'll be a couple more, and hopefully by the end of June, they'll all be graduating.
So your university allows graduation whenever, they can confer the degree whenever you want?
Yes, so that was what we negotiated with our president and the registrar, that completion is upon fulfillment of all their requirements. So basically, their date of completion should have been May 1st. And at that time, they got an in-progress grade. And the in-progress grade lasts a full quarter at our university. So as long as they complete by the end of that quarter, which actually wouldn't be till the end of our summer here, then they can complete. So we set the completion date based on the needs of the student, and we're going that way.
Yeah, they would only do conferral at the regular times. So there was no budge in that, but we were fortunate that we were able to graduate our folks on time. But there
What would
would
have
have been
happened if they didn't complete? They would have
it would have been a delayed graduation, and then their degree wouldn't have been conferred until August.
Oh, so it has to be.
It has to be. They had to have completed, and so they did, because they were, when things were shutting down and everything. My students had already been in clinic for 10 weeks out of 14, so I was able to get almost everybody out of clinic meeting expectations. I did a Qualtrics survey with all their CIs to get, just a baseline, and then all their CPIs reflected entry level.
There's a question on how are people planning to run treatment labs as part of their class, if anyone has anything to add for that.
So we just did, we just actually got through virtual treatment labs. And I'm sorry, I'm in a really dark room, so my my background is the same color as my hair. Here, that probably helps. So one of the things that we did was virtual treatment labs. And so the kiddos that I usually bring in for the students to practice treatment activities, we did them as virtual telehealth visits. So it wasn't a actual patient visit that a therapist was treating and the students were just watching in, which is another option that we've explored as well. But we actually just had them over Zoom. And they were small groups, one kiddo and their family, obviously, at home with the lab assistant, and a group of, my groups were 5 to 6 students, and the students were deer in headlights at first. They were terrified of it. I don't know why, because normally when they're on site, maybe they're just not as scared, but they all said we were really nervous about this. And it ended up going super well. A little more challenging with the younger kids. But ironically, the younger kids, the families were already used to doing their EI visits over telehealth. And, they would warn me like, yeah, this usually doesn't go well either, but we'll do what we can. And the students actually did really well. Obviously, they couldn't get their hands on the kiddo, but they worked through coming up with the treatment plan. And the discussion was really rich afterwards. We spent like an hour and 15 minutes, depending on what the family had going on with the family. And then we let the family go, and then we continued the discussion for 15 minutes or so after that, talking, just like wrapping things up. And I actually thought it didn't go horribly well for an option if you have to end up doing it completely online. It was easier to force, and I hate using the word force, but participation in a Zoom format, because when you're in a room, I feel like at least there are the students that fall back and they're just not as comfortable, and you just feel bad calling on them and making them come up with answers or work directly with the child, because you don't want them, if they're not comfortable, you don't want the kiddo to be uncomfortable. But in this format, it was very easy to look at my Brady Bunch and pick out, okay, now, Susie Q, I want you to tell me the next steps that you would take. And if you were there with him, where would you be putting your hands to assist the movement, or so on and so forth. And so I actually think it maybe increased participation, obviously at the expense of the hands-on skills.
So I just finished a early intervention practicum. So it wasn't in the PT program, but it was PTOT, speech and educators. And we had to convert our practicum. It was a 4-week practicum, and it was supposed to be on site in DC at some of our early childhood centers. And it actually was better than last year. I mean, there's definitely the issues with not seeing the classroom with the teachers and the parents. But the amount of, for early intervention, the amount of the teaming aspect that translated through the virtual platform was kind of amazing. And I was excited about it, but that was something that we'll probably continue to integrate, is to just go ahead and make it more of a hybrid, even when we're allowed to be back on site, because it forced participation. It made each of the team members, have to figure out how to work together, and using early intervention practices. So that was something that was exciting. And I also agree, I just did some voice thread labs that I really enjoyed. And I just got my student feedback from the spring, and it wasn't all bad. So so that's always good. But some of them did say that they did like the voice thread labs where they had to do education, in an idea of like as if they were doing telehealth and getting feedback that way. And every single one of them got feedback, which in a lab scenario, even though you wish they you don't. So I think that was really valuable.
There's another question if anyone has any information. It just asked if anyone could describe how they use Flipgrid in their course.
So I haven't used it, but my musculoskeletal faculty used it a lot this spring, teaching in our Interventions 2 and Eval 2 courses. And what they did is they would teach the skills, and they used, actually, fortunately, we had some videotapes that they had already begun putting together way before this as resources. So they would teach the skills, and then they would have the students videotape themselves doing the skill, either on a person if they lived with family or a roommate or whatever, or literally a piece of furniture, or a pillow or something. And then the team of faculty would review those Flipgrids and give them feedback about them on their hand placement, their body location, and the students really found it really helpful. So we're going to take those students now and get them back in the lab for hands-on practice as soon as we can, but we got really positive feedback from those students in both of those courses that they found that was a really helpful thing. And I think those faculty are going to continue to use Flipgrid even when we get back on campus, because they found it really kind of a powerful tool for the students. Very formative in their evaluation.
I would just add it, if you don't even want to use it for like the skills-based things, I think it's just great for the social part of the learning that they're missing out on. And so they can just share reflections, and then you can easily go in and provide your own reflection on how they did and have them interact with each other, because they can just do it from their phone. They're so easily, it's just so quick and easy, just a link. And so I think that piece is nice and kind of brings that human piece to the learning together, I guess.
Debbie, quick follow-up question to you. Do you think the students enjoyed the Flipgrid more because they got that one-on-one personal feedback on their hand placement that on campus, maybe in larger groups, they didn't get that? Or was it something completely different?
No, I do think it's that. I think it's part of what Trish said. I think it was that social connection piece, but I do think, even if they were, this is where I'd place my hand to do a shoulder mob and I'm using the edge of my couch, then that feedback about their body in space and their hand, and if it was too straight or too bent or whatever, it's those little details that you don't really get in your open lab of big people, right? It's kind of honing those skills. So I'm really interested to see how that carries over into the actual labs and their skill checks, those are another courses that are in progress for us, and we have to teach them out when we can teach them out. So we'll have to see about that. But yeah, I really do think they liked that formative feedback and that detail one-on-one. We have lots of, I've done weekly check-ins, and we've had lots and lots of positive comments about that. Jessica, can you share a little bit about what Go React is?
Yeah, so I was researching platforms that we could use to do similar activities to what you're describing with Flipgrid, and Go React came up in one of the webinars I was watching. It's a similar tool to Flipgrid, but it's designed to integrate with learning management systems. So the nice thing with us is we have Canvas, so it directly links to their assignments. So I can give them participation points directly through their submissions in Canvas. You can also build in common feedback phrases, so you don't have to type feedback consistently, that you can just click the button. And it actually timestamps that feedback within their video. So you can click those as you're watching them, and it timestamps it to that point in the video wherever you clicked on that feedback button, which is really nice. It does cost typically, but I know that they were offering free licenses through the end of the summer because of COVID. So we're trying it out on that trial system to see how it'll work.
Thank you.
You can also record video feedback. So similar to Flipgrid, you can either type written out feedback or you can record a video back to the student as well.
Yeah, I think that's the other thing that our students like. Jen, back to your question, they liked that verbal feedback, not just the written stuff that they might get on a skill check. And the faculty liked giving that versus having to write it all down. Yeah.
Jessica, this is Mary Jane. So it's interesting because in our learning management system, Flipgrid is integrated. So I think it just depends on what tools your own package comes with. You know, so I think it's just interesting, you know, that we have that same integration that you described, but using Flipgrid, not the other thing. So.
How many of you are matriculating new cohorts this summer? Anybody this summer? Okay. So we're using Flipgrid to introduce our faculty and staff to our students and to have them introduced. So our faculty and staff made 90-second videos. So we've been doing an engagement activity every week to keep them engaged so that they'll start in June. And so one week we had the faculty and staff make their videos and the students watched them. Now the students are making their videos and we're tying in some, you know, games as we get closer to orientation about what we're hearing in the videos, like who remembers who the twins are in class and who remembers, you know, why does someone's nickname Ocean and whatever. So it's turning out to be kind of a really fun, easy thing for everybody to do and to get to know people in a way that, you know, we're not going to have because, you know, we're doing distant and virtual orientations and that kind of stuff. All right, you guys, we have 1 minute left to this hour of fabulous thinking. Any last minute thoughts or sharing? I really appreciate everybody joining us tonight.
So I just have one last comment, and I think somebody had typed this into the chat earlier, the link to the ACAPT document that just came out a few days ago. I really encourage anyone who has to make decisions about anything or who's teaching anything in a PT program to read it. It's very helpful, and it has a lot of information, and many of the things that people asked about tonight are part of that document, and it has some guidance that's incredibly helpful. So people should check that out.
Thanks, Mary Jane.
Yeah,
Just so that I'm sorry, I shared that, and just so that you know that there will be one that is coming out that is guidance on return to clinical education as well too. That should hopefully be out in the next couple of weeks. It just got sent to ACAP yesterday, so one last vetting and it'll be out.
Terrific, thank you.
Yeah,
thanks for letting me come. I really enjoyed being here. So thanks for having me and letting me be a part. I'll be back.
Thanks, but yeah, thanks for coming.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming. This is great dialogue between our different cohorts who have a lot in common.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. All right, you guys, well, we'll be in touch for another future town hall. If you need something, just reach out. All of our email addresses are on the APPT website, so don't hesitate to reach out to any of us and we'll put something together. Until then, stay well, stay safe, and good luck with everything.
Thank you.